capitalism love story, maybe the Red campaign, it really puts a high degree of dependence on a single individual as kind of a spokesperson. So maybe with capitalism, it's like people are just kind of tired of Michael Moore. And Red campaign, you're really dependent on Bono, the personality, and that can either really help you or hinder you, depending on who it is, and help you connect.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a really great point. Public face of the campaign, yeah.
I think another point with capitalism, a love story to add on to this gentleman before me, is that there's been a fair amount of negative spin put on such media figures as Bono and Michael Moore, that it might have turned fence sitters off from their message before they even get there.
Yeah, and that's a great example, a great point, I think, and that it does happen a lot, right? I mean, you've got, in some cases, people who, and all of us, that includes all of us, where somebody tried to take me aside and explain to me how really important it is that we forever pursue capitalism to its greatest ends of all time. I think I'd be pretty resistant to that message. There'd be a part of me that might automatically be closed to what people have to say. There are certain media I won't consume because I suspect that I already know what they have to say about it and I already disagree about it. So am I going to consume that, or am I going to consume something that on some level feeds into what I already know or what I already think, or something that for me is constructive? Well, this is where we want to get to. So I'm curious about some campaigns that have been successful from your conversations. So we're going to start here. Any other successful campaigns?
Can I just say something about this capitalism?
Oh, sure, yes.
I mean, I think first thing you run into a lot of people who totally agree, and they go, and what power do we have to change?
Yeah.
And then I want to add, so the other night, Linda McQuaig was here speaking, right? People couldn't get in the room. They were so interested in hearing about what do we do about this huge income gap. And on some level, I think all of it together can is really more of a campaign. Because it's around shifting the system, right? So like even that movie, lots of people went to it, but it wasn't highly successful, right? But it's more like a building rather for things such as unequal distribution of wealth, for example. So I consider that event the other night part of the success. I mean, the room was so full of people couldn't get in. I thought that was very exciting. Absolutely nice.
Yeah, and that's a really great point, that of course every one of these is in context, and we're
And you care about breast cancer or buy this pink bag, people are, it's really a very successful campaign. It generates an obscene amount of money, but is it successful in actually doing anything for breast
where's
cancer?
the results? Do we see any research?
Yeah. Absolutely right, and that's exactly, that's wonderful that you guys are going there already, because that's exactly where we want to get to, is when we talk about a successful campaign. Well, there are dozens of ways, even within a particular campaign, that you could define success.
And when it does go into research too, a lot of it is looking for treatments and cures instead of prevention, because looking at prevention would force all these corporations to start looking at themselves, like carcinogens and cosmetics and things like that.
Like teeth valve. The question is whether or not that's potentially cancer causing, right? But we don't want to go there for teeth valve, right? We just want to raise money for breast cancer research. That's what we want to do. So absolutely, I think all of these are, I think, successful. Like, what criteria you're kind of measuring it from, and what are you looking at it from? Yes.
One campaign that's really successful right now is the Movember campaign, where you grow a mustache to raise awareness for prostate cancer.
Yeah.
And I would say that's successful because it's already raised $10 million and $4 million in Canada, which is the highest in the world.
Interesting. Great. And how? I mean, how does everybody hear about that? How do people know about that? What avenues of kind of distribution? So on Facebook?
The mall.
The mall?
I ask people about their mustaches.
Great though, right? It's a visible, that's what's interesting about stuff like that, where it absolutely manifests visibly and physically right in front of you, where on some level you're prompted to ask that. In the same way that when ribbons first were starting to be worn, people would ask, like, what is that ribbon for? What, you know, the pink ribbon campaign. That it's a visible thing that stands out, so automatically there can be a physical reminder. Wonderful, thank you. Yes?
What about when Haiti had the disaster, the earthquake?
Yeah.
Then we see all these like help Haiti phone numbers, and it was like, you know, advertising the news, and there was this massive global movement to help this one nation get through it, right? So I thought that was very successful, this help Haiti.
Okay.
In Canada, KFC has launched the Double Down sandwich,
Yes.
and they've really been targeting men, saying you're a man if you can eat this sandwich. It's 2 pieces of chicken, some cheese and bacon, and so and within the past 2 or 3 weeks of it being available, they've sold sold like 50,000 of these sandwiches across the country on this whole, you are a man, you eat meat, you can eat this.
Focusing on gender stereotypes.
Focusing on gender stereotypes. What else are they doing? Because that's a really interesting one. I appreciate you bringing that up. Because that's an interesting campaign. Like I noticed in the ad that yes, they're tying it to gender stereotypes and male identity, right? There's not a single woman to be found in that ad, and they show the men on the construction
We can even just say
site.
male stereotype.
Yes, that's true. Yes, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very manipulative campaign in some ways, right? And on top of that, it's really fighting back against a lot of the movements around vegetarianism and social consciousness and all of those things in this very aggressive, yet on some level indirect ways. But what we're going to do is run you through kind of what we're looking for, because we're going to give you, we've got a number of laptops. Each group rather, is going to get a laptop, and it'll have a little video on it, because again, we're looking at this idea of documentary and journalism, so it'll have a little video on it, and then just a very, very brief, very incomplete little summary of what's going on there, and then we'll have some questions for you to kind of go through as a group and hash out. So the one that we're going to use as an example to run you through, and I'm going to have Mitch do that here, is Green My Apple. Did anybody hear about this? Okay, interesting. Mitch, you can tell us about it.
So Green My Apple was a campaign by Greenpeace, actually, who, if you guys are familiar with Greenpeace, often engage in very fear-based attack, shocking, kind of aggressive strategies. So this is quite different for them. And what it was is, you can see, I love my iPod, but can we lose the iWaste? That's really the thrust of the campaign, was like, we really like Apple products, but we're not interested in them being environmentally damaging, the toxins and basically just Apple not being as eco-friendly as they could be. So this whole campaign was to encourage Apple to be more green. And how they did that was they made a video where they took Steve Jobs' keynote speech, I believe like for the iPhone or something big like that, and they dubbed it over with this person who sounds like Steve Jobs. And he comes out and he's like, oh, well, hey, and like it's done very well to match his movements. And he explains that like Apple is now going green. This is what we've done. We're making a green iPod. There's no chemicals, there's no waste. We're going to be recyclable. You bring back an old Apple product, we're going to turn it into a new one. And basically just it pretends like he's giving this whole speech that they've done this. And then they bring up the Greenpeace campaign, and he's like, I know you might have seen Green My Apple, but that's not why we're doing this. We're doing this because we care. You can see it at the top. And upload a picture of them hugging their computer, saying like, we love Apple, but we want it to be green. And tons and tons and tons of people did this. And they encouraged people to generate artwork. And so these are 3 examples I thought were pretty cool, especially the Snow White one where it says, clean up your toxic fumes, Steve. And she's kind of gagging on the glowing apple. And tons of people generated really professional, great artwork and spread this all around. People blogged about it, they took photos, they tagged it like crazy. Green My Apple was everywhere, and they also encouraged people to email Steve Jobs personally. But the thing, I guess I'll just jump to the case, or to the point, is that it worked. Steve Jobs announced that Apple's going greener, and it was successful, yeah?
Well, this is only one thing that I've read, so I make no claim to being absolutely accurate, but despite the success of the greening of Apple, I also read something that some of the more exotic metals that are used in Apple.
So we're going to give each of the groups a laptop. On it is going to be one of the following 5. So the Real News Network, does anybody know these guys? Function in Toronto. The Yes Men, anybody heard of them? I hope so. Okay, the Fraser Institute, their school report cards. We're going to talk about that. The Corporation as a documentary. And we're going to talk about MoveOn.org as well. Okay?
These are special kind of persons which are designed by law to be concerned only for their stockholders and not say for sometimes for their stakeholders. They're ready to work for us.
Great problem with corporate citizens is that they aren't like the rest of us. As Carolyn Kimball, that is supposed to have said, they have no soul to say, and they have no body to encourage.
I believe they just take a lot of people in corporations, so corporations are like us. Because these people, there's no such thing as enough. And I always come to point out, there's no organization on this planet that can neglect its economic foundation. Even someone living under a banyan tree is dependent on support from someone. Economic life has to be addressed by everyone. It's not just a business issue.
Unlike some of the energy, all public regulations and construction through a series of legal decisions tied through and distributed to the state. They are required by law to place the financial interests of their owners above competing interests. In fact, the corporation is literally bound to do its own when everything else, even the public good.
That's not a law of nature. It's a business decision, a judicial decision. It's not concerned only for the short-term profit of their stockholders who are very highly concentrated.
This is not my understanding. This is the official show.
They had GeorgeW.com, which is officialwriters.org, and the strategy has always been don't use that site to put up play it as great as you can, one or two factors, and I think their one was they have a www.gap.org. If their intern
You guys done?
works for lazy, they might end up in Easter time, so just watch that sort of platform.